My name's Tony Lott. I'm the general manager at Fred Bean's Kia in Langhorne. I just wanted to take a minute to talk about Larry Feldman and Career Changers USA. Larry and I have been working together for about the last 12 years now, and anything I've ever needed as far as recruiting, training, Larry has been right there. Larry's got me salespeople, he's got me managers, he's got me technicians even through the toughest times in the industry, and he is just the kind of guy who's going to tell you exactly what's on his mind. He's going to tell you exactly what he thinks. But Larry also has the expertise to back it up. When he was in the dealership world, he was a top performer, and that's really important to my staff, especially as it pertains to training. A lot of people can come in and teach out of a textbook, but Larry has real-world experience dealing with customers, dealing with situations in dealerships that we go through on a daily basis and try to train on. But Larry's been through it, so he can really empathize with the people and tell you what's worked for him and maybe what way not to go. Larry is just always at a 10. I mean, his energy level is always up there, and I think people, they just love that and they feed off of it. He's not faking it. He is genuinely excited to come in and help you. He's excited to come in and help grow your business. And he's one of those people who just really enjoys seeing dealers succeed and have a lot of fun at the same time.
All right. Life is about connection. Having a support system to lean on. And roads to endless possibility. At every turn, guiding the way, we are building the connections that move you.
So what would your dealership feel like if your entire sales staff was literally on fire, your sales and service staff? They were nonstop all over social media, completely dominating your marketplace. They could do it in 30 days or less and then continue their education to do it for an entire 6 months or a year. You literally would completely take over the entire marketplace and no one would be able to compete with you. And that's what we can do for you. So when you're walking around your community, whether you're at local restaurants or you're going to the gym, if you don't want to be bothered, fine, you won't be bothered. But a lot of people will walk up to you and say, oh my God, I love your social media. Your staff is amazing. We love what you're doing in the community. We want to come buy a car from you. We want to get an oil change at your dealership. Your community is absolutely going to love you. And it doesn't matter what platform you're on. You could be on TikTok, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, all social media platforms. You will literally be all over the place. And not only will you have ads running, but your own staff is going to be promoting your brand and promoting themselves within the dealership and within the business. So it's like running an ad times 100-fold because your entire staff is participating in the process. I've traveled all over North America. I've trained Toyota. I've trained Nissan. I've been to driving sales. I've been to Women in Auto. I get hired as a speaker for conferences at universities all over the country. And I can help change the trajectory of your dealership right now.
All right, good morning and welcome. So let's go to our deck here. So I thought it would be interesting to come up with some different books this week, just because I always do different stuff every week. So let me just share this. Present. So these are a few books. Automotive Innovation. So talking about engineering and automotive. How to Drive by Ben Collins, who was the Stig on the British show, just so you know. And Go Like Hell, Ford, Ferrari, and their battle for speed and glory at Le Mans. So that's just a couple books. Go ahead, Jeff.
Well, good morning, everybody. Another very interesting topic, which is proving to be extremely controversial now. I put somewhere in there when I sent out the invite something to the effect of, actually it's in one of our questions here, so I won't get into that, but it's definitely very polarizing, the topic of EVs right now. And because of that, our disclaimer is the views and opinions are that of our guests and not just the AutoHub show. And there we go. Check it out online for our full information. Ian.
Yeah, and the show is what's happening with EVs in 2024. So we're going to get into that. And also, if you're going to be at NADA, we will be at the show. We'll be doing broadcasting from the CDK booth in terms of slot times, and we'll also be doing ambush interviews at the show. So if you're at NADA, feel free to reach out to the show, and we're happy to book you in or interview you wherever you are. So let's get into it. Here we go.
Well, thank you. So our guest today, we have some very, very, very interesting and very good guests here. We have Brent Seavey, who is the Vice President of Everything Electric at Accelerate. And Brent, say hello. We're going to ask you first question in just a minute. Introduce yourself, please.
I'm Brent Seavey. Thank you very much for the kind intro. Spent a lot of time in the automotive space, about 28 years now, I guess. 4.5 of which at Tesla, helping to set up the remarketing department there. Now running Accelerate, helping to run Accelerate Auto and our division XCare, which provides warranty support for EVs, all makes of EVs. Glad to be here.
Thank you. And logging in a few minutes will be Petrina Gentile from, she's an independent auto journalist, generally does a lot of stuff for the National Post in Canada, and living the life I would truly love to lead because she's all over the world driving the coolest stuff ever, and probably the only person I have met that that has driven a Rimac and a Tata. So it'll be quite interesting. But start, Brent, you're going to be in the hot seat here. We have another guest that has not been able to make it, but who would have provided some spark too. But Ian, please ask Brent the first question. By that time, Petrina should be in.
No problem. I did 2 polls. They're early days, just really 2 takes on engine choice and also on the market in general, because I believe the future to be engine choices. We're seeing a move towards that, but I also saw in the news this morning that there's going to be a hydrogen plant built by a company out of British Columbia, so it'll be interesting to see where that goes. But clearly there's a lot of discussion around battery choice, engine choice, and also probably some politics in the mix. But those are just some people's opinions. So I have a question. There's been a lot of discussion about EVs lately, especially as we see shifts in customer opinion and weather and other things. Why has it become such a lightning rod for controversy, do you think, in 2024 globally? I mean, what do you think, Brent?
Well, thanks again for having me on. The idea is this: whenever people are asked to change, they're reluctant to change. People like to be predictable. They like it to be orderly. They like to know what to expect tomorrow. And so whenever you have a shift like we're seeing now in the automotive space, you've got a lot of people that are just naturally reluctant to change. And so being the one who tries to keep the status quo is easier than the one that's trying to inspire change. And the reason why is because most people want the status quo. So you don't have to sell the status quo. You just have to create enough doubt in the new alternative to keep people going forward with what they've always known. So, a lot of the automakers publicly were embracing electric vehicles, but privately were not that crazy about the idea. They had their status quo, their way of doing things. And then, of course, you've got the oil companies who would like to, again, keep the status quo rocket forward with everybody using petroleum because that's their product. So I think a lot of what we're seeing now is what's known commonly as FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Again, you don't have to sell the status quo. You just have to sell fear, uncertainty, and doubt to basically cast shade on the new technology, and you can get people to comfortably stay with their own technology. Oh, honey, we can't go that way because look at all the reports you're seeing on TV. Look at all the stuff you're seeing on LinkedIn and on other social media. So I think what we're seeing now is a concerted effort by a lot of industries to remain in the status quo, remain in the petroleum burning ICE car world. The clip that we saw at the beginning of the show, all I kept thinking was, you don't know how to use your car. I bought a diesel Jetta years ago because I thought I was doing the planet a favor before I realized I was sending out all kinds of NOx because they cheated the system with their programming the car. But be that as it may, I bought a diesel, and I quickly realized that when you're on the road, you better know where you can fuel a diesel. because you could pull into a gas station, they have no diesel there, they just have regular fuel. And so I started to kind of figure out around town, okay, where are the diesel stations that are close to my work? Where are the diesel stations that are close to my house? So that I could properly fuel this car. Well, when people buy an EV, oftentimes they buy the car with the expectation that it's all going to be just as simple as owning a gas car. And that's not entirely true. And I think a lot of people are buying used EVs now from outside of Tesla. It used to be when you bought a used EV, you bought it from Tesla, and somebody there could at least clue you in on how to live with the car. Now they're buying them from just any old dealership with varying levels of knowledge or varying levels of honesty very often too. You know, you want to sell a car. Oh, it's easy. Oh, charging places everywhere. Yeah. Download this app. You'll be fine. Without giving them any kind of background knowledge on how to actually live with the car. So when I see those people on those news reports, I feel bad for them. Primarily, I feel very bad for them because obviously they bought something that they weren't very well trained on how to use. So that's my 2 cents. If you know how to use your EV, you're fine. I've been driving an EV since 2016.
So you don't think that's kind of similar to what went on in California in the early days back to the EV1? You don't think that's what we're seeing now?
Well, the EV1 was basically a compliance car that was killed by GM just as soon as they were able to overturn the California mandates. And so the idea that we're seeing a return of that is pretty accurate, I think, from a public relations perspective. There are a lot of very, very entrenched industries, petrochemical industry, parts, suppliers, supply chain, sales service, OEM dealerships that are perfectly content to remain in the status quo. It's what they know. It's the UAW. I mean, there are going to be a lot less jobs because EVs are a whole lot easier to put together, and they can be basically put together in a very automated fashion. So we're just seeing an awful lot of people that really want to keep going forward with what they know. And I'm not saying it's necessarily a bad thing. It's a human trait, right? We like to know what's going to go on tomorrow morning. We like to know when we put our pillow down on the, head down on the pillow tonight that, the world that we wake up to is something that we're familiar with. And so I just think that people are reluctant to change. And I think there are a lot of people in the public space that are taking advantage of that very basic human tendency to just want to know how the world's going to work tomorrow.
Interesting.
Well, you know what's funny? Change is something people fight, whatever it may be. And to go really simple, when Ford brought out the EcoBoost V6 engine and the F-150, and all the they're only gonna have that for a year, damn it. And I don't know the statistics, and I commented the other day to a gentleman I've now connected with about his post on EVs. I'm not that smart. I'm not that well read, but I think the EcoBoost F-150 outsells all the other ones. Used to not outsell lightning, but it used to be there was a train of thought when the engine in your truck had the size had to start with a 4 for the cubic inches. You would never touch a 5.7 in a pickup. You needed to have a 6.6 or 5 or 4 or 9 liter engine in your truck.
Yeah,
They've gone away. They really have, and it does change. It's such this whole thing about EVs and the lightning rod, in my opinion, because it's change, and they view it as change, and it's a little bit wacky. This whole thing about charging stations, and I made a comment, and Brent, you and I went back and forth on this particular gentleman's post. You read the news, Fox News, your local blah blah blah, big storm coming. Get prepared. First thing you do with your gas engine, you go to the gas station, you fill up.
yeah.
Second thing you do in the snow belt, if you park outside, you plug it into for the block heater.
Sure.
Then you're prepared. If you have an EV and you sit in your parking outside, and you don't run out your cord to charge it and thinking you're going to be able to pull, I said this to Ian before we logged in, if you think you're going to run to the mall and go to the supercharger place and just drive in and plug your car, ain't going to happen because there's 75 people for the 25 spots. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely have some people who don't know how to use the car, for sure.
Very, very much so, and man puts hand in blender and is mutilated. Well, don't put your hand in a blender. Read the instructions first.
Buy blenders. No, you cannot buy a blender.
Don't buy a blender. They're horrible. They're maiming people.
Can I just jump in for a second, guys?
Absolutely.
Sure.
As a multiple Tesla owner, 5 times, driving them like Brent for almost 10 years, and understanding the perception of an EV, just unplug it and go. It comes down to education. Most people don't have the education on EVs. The challenge, that's the biggest challenge I see with EVs. It's not anything else but the education, because an EV is not a nice vehicle. It does not have the same driving principles. It does not have the ability to just jump in it and go and not have a plan. You have to have a plan when you drive an EV. End of story. So you're to save what is perceived as the world and the greens and this and that with the EVs. Yeah, you have to adjust and you have to change. The challenge that is coming out because of the mandates that the world is placing on EVs in the buying publics, they are now being educated on that they have to change their driving styles, and they don't want to. And that's one of the biggest challenges with EVs, that you don't have that ability, especially depending on where you live, to move from point A to point B freely. And that's the biggest roadblock that EVs have. And that's the biggest challenge. Now, over the last 2 weeks, we've seen a lot of news cycles on EVs, from Hertz to Chicago to the latest with the carbon credits. That's going to have a lot of pushback on EVs moving forward. I still love EVs. I really do. But again, it doesn't fit my driving style at this moment. But if it did, I'd have one. I've moved to a plug-in. So it's to each their own, and it should be that you are in a position to choose, not to be demanded. And that's the biggest problem.
Well, I think part of that's education, though. I mean, when you look at politicians, not to blame them, but the politicians might not be the brightest tools in the universe as a group. But at the end of the day, it's not about mandates. Even it's about what makes sense over the long term, and what time schedule. I mean, it's like, okay, we're gonna have this problem solved in 5 years, for example. I just don't see that happening. So I think really it's about, okay, we want to transition, we want to mandate that, but when you look at, say, a rate of, call it 12 to 20% in big urban areas that maybe these vehicles make sense, that's not going to be the case across the globe. It's going to be the case in certain areas where it just takes longer. And I think that's part of the challenge. The pushback is, people are saying, listen, you're telling me what I have to get. People generally don't like that. So from a point of view of, is it possible? Who knows? But is it possible in 5 to 10 years? I don't think so. So I look at it as, in certain areas, it may get to that 30% mark, maybe, but it's going to take a long time. And part of it is affordability. I think that's interesting, though, from a used car perspective, because when you look at depreciation, that's really where dealers should be looking for the opportunity. If you're looking at that 5-year-old EV from any brand, that makes a lot more sense for that consumer who, say, is price conscious than a brand new one. So there's definitely some opportunity for dealers when they're pushing back against selling new ones, but the used ones may be a huge opportunity for them, especially when you look at Hertz and how that's impacting value. But if I'm having trouble affording a gas car, maybe a used EV is a good choice for me, 5 years on.
Absolutely. If we just take that for example, and I'm going to lead it into Brett here because it's so impactful for him. If you look at affordability, the average American can only afford a $400 a month car payment. The average car payment in the United States is $770 now, I believe. So cars are unaffordable. If you take a Hertz car and you run it over the time period that you can finance it over, your payment is around $350. It makes that car a gold mine for sales. Now you add in Brett's warranty, and you are gold mine for reliability. And I will tell you, in over 200,000 on my Tesla S, my degradation of my battery was only 94%. So they
it was only 6%.
Yeah.
You mean 6%? I was gonna say that's a pretty bad number, man. That's a pretty bad number.
But in reality to that, I also charge my battery to 100% every single day because I was traveling max range every single day. So I pushed it to its limit, and I only lost 6% over 200K. Now with that, the Hertz rent-a-cars become the winners, and anybody who buys it has to have that warranty on it because it will be so beneficial in the end. The second part of it is the challenge for dealerships is the average span or days of supply is exceeding 180 days on EVs right now. And for a used car, it's 34-day lifespan before the car becomes unprofitable. So it's a big challenge. They have to be right when they're purchasing the car. If they don't, then they are in trouble. But again, buy the warranty, buy the Hertz car, get the affordability.
I can tell you firsthand the problem with the used EV situation is so many dealers bought so many used EVs for so much money 4 months ago, 5 months ago, 6 months ago.
Yeah.
And there's still, it's very funny. Gail Rubenstein, one of our sponsors, was with V Auto for a long time. And V Auto taught dealers, the car is not going to appreciate in value. You have your time. You turn over your car, and hey, as an old car dog, and all us old car dogs, hello Russell, you're a young car dog. You'll do this when they say, your first loss is your lease loss, and that is a big deal. And people sit there and say, I got a 2021 Model 3, I paid $56,000 Canadian at the auction, and I need to get my 56 out of it. Yet Tesla's selling 2023s for 54.
Yeah.
Brand new. So something's very wrong. And that has got nothing to do with the EV world.
Yeah.
It's got to do with the idiot world.
Well, it's got everything to do with Elon basically getting into a price war with the entire world when it comes to EVs, which has actually benefited us at Xcare. Sorry to say that, well, somebody always benefits from a bad situation. Because when people are ass over head in their car, what they do is they end up getting a warranty for that car because they can't trade themselves out of it. And so if you're $15,000 flipped in your Model 3, $4,000 warranty sounds pretty smart now, doesn't it? Keep your car for a few more years and get your ROI back or at least get level in your car. And so, yeah, the situation with depreciation is entirely caused by Tesla and by their price cuts. It has nothing to do with the value of these cars. These cars are designed to last for 200,000, 300,000, 400,000 miles with routine service. And routine service is really not that much. You have to fix these cars. You don't have to service these cars. That's the amazing thing. You don't really, there's very little service, but when you have to fix them, they're bloody expensive because Tesla builds their cars to replace components, not to repair components. So if you have a Mercedes-Benz and you have a steering rack issue with the steering rack motor, they drop the steering rack, they pull that motor out, they put a new motor in it, they put the steering rack back up in your car, and they pat down the ass, and $800 to $1,000 later, you're back on the road. It's a $3,000 steering rack from Tesla because they don't fix them. They tear them out, they throw them in the dumpster, they put a new steering rack in. So because they don't have enough service.
Wait. You mean I'm not environmentally conscious and recycling?
I'll give Tesla a lot of props, and I helped to build the company, and I have a big spot in my heart, a big place in my portfolio that includes Tesla. But the fact of the matter remains is, from a green perspective, servicing these cars, they are horribly wasteful. They'll throw a driver's seat in the dumpster rather than fix a lumbar support because it's easier to bolt in a new seat, right? In and out of the service shop. So the ethos is we don't have enough service shops, so we can't repair cars. We have to just replace components. And that's where we come in, because people get a few really hard service bills and they're like, oh, hell, I got to get a warranty. So, but the issue of depreciation has nothing to do with that. That was on the side. But depreciation is completely, it's an artificial construct brought on by Elon Musk to price forward the world.
But you know something? If Elon was a car guy, what he would have done is he would have come out with rebates and kept his, you know, the big reason, this debate on rebates has gone on for years, but the reason for that is, Dodge especially, is the fact that they can keep this truck that they've been building since 2010 with an American $55,000 MSRP, transaction amount at $35,000, so they can lease it and hold a high residual.
Yeah.
And their residuals are kind of getting hit there. So that's quite the thing. I would love Petrina to chime in here, but she's on mute and we can't see her. But she has joined us. She will come live as soon as she can.
The one thing I'll agree with Brent is on that depreciation scale. Elon hit the Model S and the Model X for 35% in 2023. He killed that. That killed that car completely in resale, and it's unfortunate, but he was going up against the OEMs, the legacies, and then the legacies have all dropped off now, and so it's a big challenge because Ford announced yesterday, I think it was, that they're cutting production yet again on all their EVs by 60%. So they're only running half a shift. So it's
I made a comment on that. It is purely a supply and demand issue. And I love to identify as agnostic on the EV issue. I love some EVs, I hate some EVs, et cetera, et cetera. But it's not an EV issue. It's called, they finally caught up to all the demand. You know, you can walk into a Ford dealer now and you can, what would you like for your lighting? Would you like a platinum, a this, a that? Oh, but we've got XLTs coming. But I can give you 6, and by the way, here's your discount. And how about now? What do I have to do to make it work? Same thing with Mustangs. That's happening. It's a supply and demand, not anything else.
Yeah,
I think that well, demand follows perception too, and I think a lot of this FUD from the petrochemical industry has had a very real effect on the buying public. The buying public is shifting their behavior back away from EVs because of that. So the idea that this is a supply and demand issue, it's a perception issue where people's perceptions now are being turned away from EVs, and so by virtue of that, you do have a big supply because people are scared away from buying them. Sad thing is, it just all comes down to education, but it also comes down to somehow controlling the public discourse about EVs. And unfortunately, well, I should say fortunately, we live in a free society. You know, people are allowed to say whatever they want to say, whether or not it's true or not.
You know,
just bring in fear. Trust me.
Well, you know something. The thing is here these days, and I'm gonna quickly move away from this now that Petrina is here to the next question. The trouble is today you can and you can't say, it's a free society. You can and you can't say what you want. It all depends what room you're in. And you can sit there if you go to. Actually, it's very funny. I was going to say a monster truck rally. Don't talk about your EV. Although I saw a Lightning the other day with 35s on it and a lift, and I'm like, well, hey, that's cool. And I haven't seen a Lightning done up. In period, you know, it's still caught up by that other crowd. However, I'm going to move along. Petrina, thank you so much for being here. I'm glad you could make it in. We thought it was because of our enhanced security measures, which we will not discuss on the show. But thank you for joining us. I know you had a busy schedule, so glad to have you here. The first question that Ian had asked about back and forth comments on EVs and why has it become a controversy. So this has been going on a lot, and you have the benefit of being heavily exposed to either side. I mean, I love to talk about you from going from an EV launch in China. You fly over to Italy and then see the new Lamborghini V16 47 turbocharger and et cetera, et cetera. So you get to see the best of both worlds. But thank you. Say a little bit about yourself before we go to the next question.
Sure, absolutely. Thanks for having me. I'm an automotive journalist, and I've been covering the automotive industry for 20 years. And I primarily work for the Globe and Mail newspaper in Canada, writing for their drive section. And then I report on the automotive industry for a number of outlets, on television. So CTV, BNN, Bloomberg, CHCH-TV, CP24. I have the best job in the world. No complaints here. I travel all over the world, test driving new vehicles. I've gone off-roading in the Hummer EV. I'm going to be doing, what am I doing now? Next week, I'm going off to do the Lexus GX launch in Arizona, and then I'm going to Utah for the Ford Ranger truck. And then the New York Auto Show, but I also covered Tokyo Motor Show, and as you said, driven the Lamborghinis. I think every single vehicle in the lineup for the past 15 years or so. So very fortunate to be able to do that and transition from electric to gas and everything in between.
Well, when I grow up, I want to be just like you. And before the next question, you're the only person I probably ever met that has Elon Musk, David Suzuki, and Stefan Winkelmann on speed dial. So, so next question, and we're going to ask you to answer it first. So, in the questions I sent out, internal combustion is from Mars. EVs are from Venus, right? Why has this become, though, such a red and blue, using an American analogy, a red and blue debate? Why are people lining up on such sides of this? And why would you think you're exposed to it? So.
Yeah, and you know what? You're seeing it even more now, especially with the colder weathers and people driving electric vehicles. We saw in Chicago all those Teslas lined up in the cold because they weren't able to charge. We also saw that in Ottawa when the temperatures were deep down in the frigid cold. People couldn't charge their electric vehicles, and the range was a lot less in the colder weather. So I think we even have it more polarizing now than ever before. You have those ones that are saying, you know what, you need a gas engine. How can we do this? How can we dump this? Before we talked about the lack of infrastructure, which is true in Canada. We really need more infrastructure to support those electric vehicles, and we're going to see that changing. We need more affordable electric vehicles. Hopefully that comes soon too. We have the new Chevy Equinox, which is supposed to be one of the cheapest ones, electric vehicles to come to market soon. So hopefully all that's going to change that. But then you have, like I say, this cold weather that a lot of people really didn't take into account or really seriously until we reach those frigid temperatures. And in places like Alberta too, where you had minus 40-degree temperatures last week, and people are being advised, cut your electricity consumption. So how are we supposed to move to zero emission vehicles by 2035 when there are so many obstacles in between? So you really have this polarizing even more. Either you love the EVs or you don't. You want to be that gas powered person for as long as you can.
Yeah. Well, you hit that right on the head, if you ask my opinion. Brent, I got to tell you though, I just saw this come up on Fox report that Biden's motorcade is going all EVs. The Beast is going to be based on Model S, and those SUVs going along will be, just kidding. Brent, forget about Biden. What's your opinion? Why has it become such a big debate on which side of the spectrum you're on? And I don't mean that spectrum.
Yeah, I've been told I'm on the spectrum. I think they're right. No, honestly, God, it just depends. It doesn't depend on anything, actually. Our entire society is polarized, right? You take any issue at all. You take, virus mandates, vaccination mandates, for instance. Everybody was for them until they were against them, and everybody's for something until the other political party grabs on them, but then they're against it. And you've got a lot of people just trying to manipulate us and move us around. And sadly, every issue is going to be if the Democrats come out in favor of EVs, the Republicans will be against them. If the Republicans come out in favor of something, the Democrats will hate it. So you get two sides of this fence that are just, lots of entrenched power that wants to continue on in power, and so they're going to basically just move us around however they see fit. But at the end of the day, be educated, be agnostic politically when it comes to social issues and environmental issues. Just get educated. I've been a lifelong conservative. I don't know who to vote for anymore because I'm very green. I'm very concerned with the planet. I'm very concerned with the environment. So I honestly, God, I don't know who to vote for anymore. And I'm kind of glad I'm at this point in my life because now I can just educate myself and move about in this world from what I've learned instead of being.
Well, it's interesting, Brent, and not touching on that too much because I know what side of this topic you fall on, but who would ever have thought that you would see, and we're going to move on after this because I'm not opening this up, who ever thought you would have seen Democrats pushing to sell arms and Republicans saying no? Who would ever thought you would have said that? So
true. So true.
Well, it is, and that we are polarized, and it's you need adults in the room somewhere, and the trouble is the greatest driver of EV publicity is Elon Musk, and he's becoming wackier than ever and making statements designed to upset everybody. And now the big reason I put this question is everything I see. A gentleman made a comment on the LinkedIn Live and said, "Get a grip, people. EV is DOA." And it I don't believe it. Even I differ on beliefs. Ian thinks we will be at 20% max EVs.
Yep.
I don't believe
maybe
that,
30. Maybe 30.
I do believe the urban world will become very EV centric. It will have to be. The rural world, and 2 weeks ago, I was out in rural Washington State. My daughter and her husband took us for a weekend away. We stayed at an Airbnb, which was on a farm. And I have to tell you something. I was out of gas, and I was panicking at midnight in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And there's got to be something somewhere. But,
wisdom is found in the middle, man. That's all it is. Wisdom's found in the middle. I don't think EVs are for everybody, even though I'm a strong proponent for them. I don't think they're for everybody. I think if you live in an apartment building and you don't have charging at home or at work, you probably shouldn't buy one. If you're relying on an EV for your business, you should be really, really smart about where you're charging, when you're charging. You have to keep your state of charge above 20% when it's cold outside. Otherwise, you're going to get to the supercharger and you're going to have a very bad time. Especially if you let it go to zero. This one guy's like, yeah, my car has been at zero for 24 hours on the supercharger. Well, no kidding, Sherlock. If you go below a certain percentage, your battery can't warm itself up to accept the DC charge from that thing. You need to keep your state of charge higher. You can't run it like a gas engine car where you're down to the last gallon and you pull into the last Shell station in town. My wife has no patience for EVs. I love her to death. She supports me in all that I do. She has no patience on road trips for EVs. So we took her gas engine SUV down to St. Louis, past St. Louis. But anyways, it's about an 8-hour drive. And we got down in the middle of rural Illinois, and we didn't stop for gas at this one because we were going to stop at gas at the next rest stop. And we got to the next rest stop, and there was one gas station there, and they were having an issue, and the pumps wouldn't go. And we had very, very low fuel, like the light was on. And I was like, oh, crap. So I got out the Navi app, and gas stations near me, and they're like, oh, okay, there's one like 10 miles away. Okay, we'll be good. So we go 10 miles away to this middle of no place Illinois gas station. And of course, it closed at 6, and it was 6:15, and it was dark and crickets. And thankfully, another 3 miles away, we literally limped her car into a gas station. And I'm thinking, okay, we could easily write a blog post about, gas engine car left for stranded in the middle of rural Illinois,
nobody would do that.
Exactly.
I was stupid. I should have fueled when I could have fueled, and I didn't. I don't know what I was doing, but I was stupid. And stupid pays for itself. And I just see these folks and I feel for them on these news stories, but I also know that basically stupid ends up paying for itself. You've got to educate yourself on the tool that you're using. You just can't, but don't put your hand in the blender. Don't do it. You just be smart. So
Agree 100%. I mean, I remember years ago when I sold cars and people came in, and this was in the early days of hybrids, and they'd come in and they'd be asking a question about a hybrid versus a gas car, and I'd ask the question, like, what are you using the car for? I'm not saying you shouldn't buy it. It's a question of what are you using it for? And I think that's really, my opinion on it. I don't think you ever get 100% of anything, but if it makes sense for that person, sure, like it makes sense. But for some people, maybe they're just not bright enough to have that as a vehicle choice. Maybe they need something simpler. Not to beat them up, but
yeah. I mean, there's always people that need a warning label on a cigarette lighter. You know what I mean? But yeah, the sad fact is, it comes down to education. But it also, honest to God, like to your point, what are you going to use the car for?
Yep.
You've got salespeople of varying integrity out there in the car space. I was in it for an awful long time. And they just want to sell that Tesla on the front row and get this. There's a $400 spiff on it. I want to sell this thing, and so I'm gonna show this guy this app that you just put this app on your phone. You can find all kinds of places to plug in because I want to get the $400 spiff and get that Model 3 off the front row that we've had for 122 days. So sadly, that's just the case. You don't have people that are equipped to educate the people that are actually selling the product to the people, and so it's just
that's got something. That part of that topic is way beyond the EV world. And we're with the quality of the people actually selling products, because somebody comes in and says, I want to buy an EV. They go, okay, here's one. I want to okay, here's one. They don't say buy. They don't want to find out anything. They want to get a deal done. And of course, we had a famous story here where somebody bought a used Model 3. The person traded it in. They had what's the autopilot?
Yeah, autopilot.
Full self-driving, whatever. Yeah.
All that. They had all the other optional stuff, or all the icons on his screen. Buys the car, gets on the highway, and goes, "Why isn't this working?" Calls the dealer, a non-Tesla dealer, and says, "This isn't working. There's a local law."
Yeah.
So he went into Tesla, and Tesla said, "You don't got it." Yes, I do. The button's right there. No, you don't got it, because it's a subscription. And it ended up going to, it didn't go to court because in the end, this particular dealer, part of a very large dealer group, went to the regional director, vice president, who said, just pay the $5,000. We're getting reeked over the coals.
Yeah, and that's really what it comes down to.
My TP2, but if I didn't pay for the subscription, I wouldn't have Netflix. So I mean, just because you have a button on the screen doesn't mean it works, right?
I don't know. I get mine from my neighbor.
And that full self-driving is now 16,000 in Canada. Like 3 years ago, it was like 8,000.
It's freaking insane. It's
I actually want to know.
We got to pay for the lawsuit somehow.
We know better Teslas than anybody on this call.
Okay.
Now, maybe this is just a Vancouver thing. Can you program your Tesla to go 100 miles an hour in traffic and find the only opening to go? Because I will see that every day Tesla's doing that.
You can't do it. It's not that smart. On the freeway, you can't do it in town. The autopilot is limited to 10 miles an hour over in town. But on the freeway, you can set it at, I think you can set it up to 80 miles an hour or something like that. Above that, yeah.
But in the full self-driving, on the beta test they're doing in Canada and the US, you can use it in the city as well. I tested it out in Montreal. Incredible. Yes. And it can be over 10 kilometers, 20 kilometers an hour. And it's mind-boggling what it can do.
It can be really cool. The problem with downtown areas is, especially when you have a lot of tall buildings, is autopilot and a lot of stuff that's GPS actually runs on cell tower signals. And so when you get between those buildings, you get a lot of reverb of these signals off the building, and cars freak out and they think they're blocked over and come back over here. And so I'm a little dubious on using a lot of that stuff in an urban environment. But yeah, you're right. It is pretty cool. It's just, I don't quite trust you yet. Entirely.
Neither do I. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I hear Teslas have problems in rural Pennsylvania too.
It's getting Amish or what?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, next question.
Actually, the Amish have autopilot. They do. Their course usually take them home. Yeah, and you could be drunk as a skunk and fall over fast.
Graham, take me home.
What do you think this time? I mean, we've been doing shows on this for what, 4 years on a regular basis, and the thing that's I think is constant, which is kind of interesting, is the debate has not ended. So it's not like, oh, okay, they've won, we're just going to accept it. Whether it's a dealer perspective, or whether it's a consumer perspective, or whether it's an insider perspective, or someone who sells to it. I mean, the only thing consistent is you have people that are either on the fan side who are convinced, and people who are against. So my question there is, how do you win over the people that just say no, never EV for me? Like, how do you do that? And I mean, I'm gonna
people in Montana that still think horses are superior to cars. Have somebody that's going to hold on to the technology as long as they can. And in some ways, horses are superior to cars. And look for a buddy paddock, you'll find out that horse is going to get you through, and your car just might not.
What do you think, Petrina? I mean, you're hearing from OEMs. What are they saying?
I think education.
Yeah.
Education is key in really telling people. I think, they buy these cars, and I'm shocked at the number of people that I hear from that have purchased an EV and live in a condo and not looked into what's involved in getting a charger in that condo. It blows my mind. And like, you should actually be looking, do your research, but find out if you can actually, your building allows you to put a charger in if you're in a big condo, how much it's going to cost the corporation, because it's a it's a lengthy process. It can take months. And I'm blown away.
Thousands.
Yeah.
To get a charger in a parking garage.
Yeah, and it blows my mind. I'm like, oh my gosh, you haven't done your research. And part of that is the onus is on the dealers. I think the dealers need to educate the consumers more. I think people that are selling EVs need to be educated more, because you have a lot of situations where consumers are coming in and they know a lot more about the product than other people do. So I think education is really important to kind of convince people. But I'm like your wife. I'm not on the EV bandwagon just yet, and that's only because I don't live in a downtown area. I'm commuting from Toronto to like the Niagara Falls area. It's and I need something that's going to take me there and back in one day without having to charge. And it's really difficult to do that in a vehicle right now. So for my lifestyle, it doesn't suit me at this point. So I'm still hanging on to the ICE, but I will say I've driven a lot of those. I've driven the Ioniq 6 and totally impressed with it. And it has a little bit of a longer range. And it's a bit sporty. But yeah. Again, that's polarizing, right? Some people love it. I know a lot of people are like, oh my God, I love this car. I love the look of it. I'm on the fence about it. I'm like, that doesn't really do much for me. But again, I think education is really key in telling people about the charge and telling them about the cold weather, and and more transparency too when there are situations like I just did an article for the Globe and Mail about a big recall in Canada and the US on the RAV4 Prime plug-in hybrid vehicle. They had an issue with not the high voltage battery, but the 12-volt battery in the plug-in hybrid. And they got a notice back. I think it was last summer in the US, saying don't charge the car in colder temperatures. And then in Canada, there was about 6,000 cars out of the 43,000 or so in that recall. They said the same thing. Don't charge the car until we fix this issue, and don't charge below 5 degrees Celsius. 5 plus 5. So that and one of the people that just had their recall done last week, the part replaced, went a good 6 months without driving his vehicle. And he was really frustrated because he heard crickets from the manufacturer. They're like, well, we don't know when you're going to get this solved. And he's like, I paid the premium for a plug-in hybrid, and now you're telling me I can't use it as a plug-in hybrid. I can only use it during the summertime because there is a risk of a potential fire. So it's really frustrating for consumers too, because they waited a long time to get this product. And as you know, there's still waiting lists to get into a RAV4 Prime. So it's really frustrating on that end too, especially when it's 5 degrees and being warned and not to charge in those temperatures, which really isn't that cold for Canada.
Yeah.
I have to tell you, I put EVs in the same category as somebody buying an S-Class Mercedes, a 7 Series BMW, an Audi A8, or whatever they have, you're buying the newest, latest, greatest thing. And the reason that people keep buying 7 Series again, because they ain't a good car. Let's not kid each other. I'm a BMW guy, right? You're laughing, but you know I'm right. The reason that they came out with roadside assistance was for the 7 Series and the S-Class people. I remember back when the early 2000s, when the BMW redid the 7 Series, and we had a guy, there was a BMW, he was the head of a biotech firm. When public sold $300 million worth of shares to this German company, they came into town, they're going for dinner, the car stopped in the middle of the intersection, just died, totally. Nothing would happen. The battery was good, but the car wouldn't do it. He was highly embarrassed, and they all laughed as he was running in his tuxedo in the middle of winter to go get his M5. And they all laughed. But EV people expect this car, people in general that are new to EVs expect them to be perfect. They expect the battery to work anytime. And I'm not arguing in favor. I'm just saying, get a grip on reality. People aren't buying EVs because they're helping the planet. They're buying them because they're cool and they can save money on gas. That's my humble opinion. There was a big joke years ago about the first Prius Prime in Canada that was given to David Suzuki. And for you Americans, I don't know if you know who David Suzuki is, but he's a big time environmental guy and everything else. So he flew on a private jet to Toronto to pick up the car to drive across Canada.
And let me I could jump in there because I wrote a piece about his drive that he did recently across Canada. So he did the drive across Canada, Volvo. Oh gosh, what was it?
Bolster?
Oh no,
EV.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, all electric. He also ended up getting a flat tire way north of Winnipeg. Was basically screwed because it was a weekend. Nobody had a tire anywhere but David Suzuki, so they end up actually flatbedding the vehicle in the middle of the night on a Saturday night, like in the wee hours, flatbedding it to the Winnipeg dealership. At that dealership, they take the tire off of a car that's already sold and put it on his car so he can continue to drive. And the last question I asked him was, "How are you going to get home?" And he said, "I'm flying home." So he didn't take that EV. He didn't drive it all the way back to Vancouver, Victoria. He decided, you know what? I'm not maybe environmentally friendly, but I'm taking that plane back home.
Oh, by the way, wasn't he in Dubai recently? We're not going there. I'm not going to do that. Hey, Tim, I see you're on here, but I want to ask you a question, you being a Texan. I saw somewhere that there's a company, and I think it's in Texas. They have a 5-ton rated EV tow truck. So whatever company it was. On it are banks of batteries. No generators. Banks of massive kilowatt, megawatt batteries that they go and they recharge dead. Like it's roadside assistance for EVs. Is that true down there, or am I just smoking dope?
No, it's true. No, it's true. You may smoke all the dope you want. But bottom line is, this is what's fun about it, right? It's fun to hear people give some type of number in saying 20% will max out. This is the kind of things that I love how you guys will archive this, and 2 years from now you'll be able to go back and look at it and say things have changed again, right? The battery technology has changed, the charging infrastructure has changed. There's a whole lot that's out there, and there's great experiments, lots of startups right now that are raising millions of dollars to show up with tow trucks that have batteries on them, or to have a contraption you can carry around in your trunk that will give you 20 or 30% charge when you run out of battery, so you can make it to the charging station. I mean, there's just a whole lot that's happening right now, and this is what's fun about it. I dialed in late and listened to Brent talking about politics and how that is the tail that wags or that which wags the tail, however you want to look at it. Hey, the train has left the station. The investment that's been made in electrification of vehicles and autonomy, both things, right? The the investments made in both of those directions has left the station, and it's going to happen. And I think that's what's funny about it is the government, whether the Republicans own it or the Democrats own it, they have no way to steer the cultural continuum. And it's the corporations that have done that. It's the corporations that have made the investment and made the decision to move in that direction. So we'll see this pan out in Texas and everywhere else where you can smoke dope legally or illegally.
Hey, Tim, I'll end it on this on what you just said. Does your cell phone have a cord? No. Does it last longer than it did 10 years ago? Yes. Does it do more stuff than it did 10 years ago? Yes.
A lot.
Everything changes. Everything gets better. Batteries get better, smaller, lighter, easier manufactured. The technology has to change because we sure as hell do not have the rare earths capable to make the batteries that we need. So it's all going to change. It is. Will we get the adoption rates that they want? No. Will we get better adoption rates? Yes. Simple as that. Will we start selling more used cars? Yes, because people will adapt and people will change and people will get to the points of what they want. As was said, I lived in Niagara and commuted to Toronto, and I needed a car that could make it. My Tesla could make it in the summer, couldn't make it in the winter. I had to stop every single day for a charge. Did I adapt? Absolutely. It's all about adapting to change. And as they say, the only person likes change is a baby with a dirty diaper. That's pretty much the be all to end all. Nobody likes change. And if you go to any car dealership, this is how we've always done it. This is how we'll always do it. That is the motto in the car dealership world. We don't change well. We don't even like look at Amazon coming to the car industry, and look how the dealerships are pushing back and saying, "Oh my God, they're invading our space." Well, they're invading your space because you didn't change the digital retail when you had the opportunity 3 years ago, and it was there. We have so much change moving forward with AI, with EV, with name the acronym. We can develop a change platform for it. But what is going to be great is how it's going to change, and that's what's going to be great about our industry in the next 5 years. We're going to see so much development change, and I can't wait to see it myself. And with NADA coming up, it's going to be amazing to see all the new platforms.
What was it? Mark Twain said people like progress, they just don't like change. and sadly, that's the truth. And as Steve Jobs said, it's the job of every CEO to see to it that their company lasts longer. He said every company will ultimately fail. It's the job of the CEO to make sure that that point is further out in the future. And so you've got a lot of these industries right now, the petrochemical industry, the parts industry, suppliers, all this stuff. They're going to die someday. The job of their CEO is to see to it that that point is further out in the future. And so it's their narrative is the EVs are terrible. Oh, push back. You're being told government's mandating what you drive, all this shite. Well, at the end of the day, they're just doing their job to see to it that their industry, their death point is further off in the future. And so I can't trade for it. It just is what it is. But understand that when you're reading these things, understand that when you're consuming this stuff on the internet, that behind that story is an agenda. Behind that story is an industry, is a CEO, is a group, is an environmental this or an industry that. Understand when you're reading and consuming that basically it's been curated to do something to you. It's been curated to make you think a certain way. And just get your information from a whole bunch of different sources.
100%.
This is probably the issue when you have the mandates, whether you're, regardless of your political leaning, when you say you have to do something by this point, people don't like that. We don't live in a society where we do what we're told. Holy
cow! I have to pay my taxes by April 15th. I don't like that, but Bloody will do it.
They got people to help you with that.
There are people, and I can't sure what they're called. They're see it on TV where they're independent citizens or something like that. And
Oh, sovereign citizens.
Yeah, I don't believe in taxes.
I don't think that. Yeah, I love that.
Make their own cardboard license plate for their car.
And while they're being handcuffed and everything, they say, "I don't recognize your authority."
Awesome, recognizing handcuffs.
Let me introduce you to the guy they call Babe in the jail here. You know, I'm sure he's going to tell you he doesn't recognize your authority either.
We all just made the list. Thanks a lot.
We are out of time. Any final thoughts, Jeff?
This was great. A lot of fun. You know, it's funny when we do these shows. We would love to have them go on longer, just because it's such a great discussion. And I won't even call it debate because many of us here seem to be very, very middle of the road on the whole thing. But the truth be known is that we only have a short attention span for people to watch it. So thank you all very much. Petrina, I would have loved you could have been here for the whole thing, but I understand how busy you are. I appreciate you taking the time, and you know, just make sure that Mr. Winkleman knows that I'm available anytime if he needs a long-term road test of anything.
Deal.
All right. Have a great week.
Thank you. All the best.
Take care.
Watch for our cool new trailing one, and I'm Brent, if you want to know what happened last week, I'll have a separate call with you. So thank you.
And we definitely need to catch up. Take care, y'all.
Oh,
Yeah.
definitely. Ian, enter.
Thank you.